Hi guys, it is January 10, 2015. Well, somebody came out and said it. Ron Paul came out and said, we now live in a police state. Unfortunately, because it's Ron Paul, the liberal progressives will even be pushed back further, thinking, oh my God, it's Ron Paul saying it, so of course it can't be true. This is an article written by Ron Paul. If Americans were honest with themselves, they would acknowledge that the republic is no more. We now live in a police state. If we do not recognize and resist this development, freedom and prosperity for all Americans will continue to deteriorate. All liberties in America today are under siege. It didn't happen overnight. It took many years of neglect for our liberties to be given away so casually, for a promise of security from the politicians. The tragic part is that the more security was promised, physical and economic, the less liberty was protected. And the less physical security we got, and less economic security we got. With cradle-to-grave welfare, protecting all citizens from any mistakes, and a perpetual global war on terrorism, which a majority of Americans were convinced was absolutely necessary for our survival, our security and prosperity has been sacrificed. It was all based on lies and ignorance. Many came to believe that their best interests were served by giving up a little freedom now and then to gain a better life. The trap was set. At the beginning of a cycle that systematically undermines liberty with delusions of easy prosperity, the change may actually seem to be beneficial to a few. But to me, that's like excusing embezzlement as a road to leisure and wealth. Eventually, payment and punishment always comes due. One can't escape the fact that a society's wealth cannot be sustained or increased without work and productive effort. Yes, some criminal elements can benefit for a while, but reality always sets in. Reality is now setting in for America, and for that matter, for most of the world. The piper will get his due, even if the children have to suffer. The deception of promising success has lasted for quite a while. It was accomplished by ever-increasing taxes, deficits, borrowing, and printing press money. In the meantime, the policing powers of the federal government were systematically and significantly expanded. No one cared much, as there seemed to be enough gravy for the rich, the poor, the politicians, and the bureaucrats. Warfare and welfare state requires police control. As the size of government grew and cracks in the system became readily apparent, a federal police force was needed to regulate our lives and the economy, as well as to protect us from ourselves and make sure the redistribution of a shrinking economy or economic pie was fair to all. Central economic planning requires an economic police force to monitor every transaction of all Americans. Special interests were quick to get governments to regulate everything we put in our bodies, food, medications, and even politically correct ideas. IRS employees soon needed to carry guns to maximize revenue collections. The global commitment to perpetual war, though present for decades, exploded in size and scope after 9/11. If there weren't enough economic reasons to monitor everything we did, fanatics used the excuse of national security to condition the American people to accept total surveillance of all by the NSA, the TSA, FISA courts, the CIA, and the FBI. The people even became sympathetic to our government's policy of torture, which is really phenomenal. To keep the people obedient to statism that originated at the federal level of government, control of education was required. It is now recognized that central control of education has actually ruined education, while costs have skyrocketed. National control of medical care has brought a similar result. This has meant more money for bureaucrats, as well as drug, insurance, and health management companies, and less money for medical care. Constantly, more police are required to run our lives at greater costs while providing less benefit. Nationalizing both medical care and education has provided a great incentive to increase the policing powers of the federal government. The predictable poverty that results from such a terrible system is now upon us and is a strong motivation for the militarization of local police as part of the expansion of the national police state. Temporary and perceived benefits of government overreach and expanded policing powers end up becoming the real problem. By the time it is understood that these benefits are artificial, government power and special interests have gained control of a system designed to serve them and not the people the programs were purported to help. The victims are left hanging and taught that too much freedom is the source of the problem, prompting even more support for the policing power of the state. Today, the failure of central economic planning and of the U.S. as world policemen is everywhere to be found. This is especially noticeable in the police war on the law breakers, real and unreal, in Amerika. The failures of social and economic policy of the past 50 years have led to a mounting friction between the local police and the rights of the people. Local police have been militarized and have become an integral part of the national police state. A police culture that accepts the principle of initiating unjustified violence against citizens has become a serious problem. The news is constant. If it's not Ferguson, it's New York City. If not New York City, it's Chicago or Detroit or Cleveland. And I believe the violence in our cities is only in its early stages. We had a taste of the conflict in the 1960s, but the fundamental values of equal justice and economic opportunity have receded further from reality, failing to understand why the past 50 years of government expansion to eradicate poverty has only worsened the conditions of our cities. Failing to understand why the past 50 years of government expansion to eradicate poverty has only worsened the conditions of our cities will guarantee that the violent conflicts we see erupting today will only get worse. 50 years ago, as a result of Martin Luther King Jr.'s leadership in a plea for equal justice, LBJ declared war on poverty. Poverty was seen at that time as the major contributing factor in the plight of those living in the inner city. King's dream was to make sure all people will be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. Good advice, but it was never followed. Residual racism remains, but the excuse for every shortcoming in the failed cities is said to be due to the color of one's skin. The very expensive war on poverty has, after 50 years, only made matters worse, compounding the problems of poverty and inflation while hurting most of the people the war was supposed to help. Currently, our government spends over $1 trillion per year on anti-poverty programs. Over the past 50 years, over $16 trillion was spent, i.e., wasted. And yet poverty and dire economic conditions remain the major factor in the violence that persists, which incites or gives the police the excuse to overreact to maintain order. Since Paul's article is pretty much kind of like a dissertation for the internet, I'm going to stop there and I will link to this article below. It is a very important article. And my suggestion is that everybody print it out, make copies, hand it out to your friends, your family, and your neighbors. It is very long, but it is very important. So I do hope that everybody comes over and reads it. But, you know, it is the perfect article to hand out to people because it really does go through a whole lot of what we are living today and how we got here. So, the U.S. empire, who does it serve? It doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve the people. Blowback all around, we are less safe. And that is for damn sure. We are less safe as we just hand over more and more freedom. What to expect in 2015, foreign affairs, domestic issues, and a conclusion toward a peaceful revolution. I can't say that I have Ron Paul's hope. I do respect the man, but I feel that 2015 is not going to be a fun year for liberty, no matter how hard we try to make it that. So, yeah, I do think everybody should print it out and copy it and circulate it. Please circulate this link. Put it on your Facebook, your email contact list, your Twitter tweets, however you circulate it. Get this article out. We have to wake up, Americans. My God, we are rapidly descending into a darker nightmare than what we're living right now. And on that note, have a great night. Hope you have a nice tomorrow, and I'll see you soon.